Hey to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Chiro Tax Pro, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 202 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I am your co-host, Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of talking to Dr. John Davila. If you want to know more about chasing the home run record of Babe Ruth, stay tuned. So today we have the opportunity of interviewing John Davila, and you're coming in today from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Luke and I are coming in once again from Grand Junction, which is in the Grand Valley on the western slope of Colorado. And I love what we're doing today. We've had such a fun pre-interview chat with you today, hearing about what you do and what makes you unique. And this guy he'll make you laugh. So stay tuned for this episode. So as we jump into this, as per our usual fashion, we always like the chiropractor to share their chiropractic story and what really influenced them to become a chiropractor. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with our audience today, we'll jump right into this episode with you.
Sure. What was the reason why I went to chiropractic school?
Yeah, like what was the impetus for like John to say, hey, chiropractic is my vision and my mission and my passion and my future?
You know, it never was until I got into a car accident. And then I started seeing somebody. And when I started going to him, I was like, this is pretty cool. So I was actually a chemist working in a fragrance lab, and which kind of explains the whole movement to compliance, because there's no bending the rules in chemistry. So I had gotten into a car accident. I played baseball in college and was playing on a softball team. After getting the car accident, really bad, rear-ended really bad, I couldn't lift my shoulder. And I got better, really better. I could almost lift my arm without doing anything else, just the adjustments alone. And then that was just someone straight chiropractic doing that stuff. And then after a few months, started going to someone who did a little bit more sports rehab stuff and got about 95% of my shoulder motion back without having to do any surgery I was told I needed to have or anything else like that. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I may want to go. So I went to a recruiting thing that Palmer put on, and went down, visited. Let's see, I was in New Jersey at the time, so I visited NYCC when it was out on Long Island, and then went down to a DE seminar. And I thought, wow, these people are crazy. Woo, this is craziness. And then later on, went out and visited Palmer. And by the way, those people at DE are now, most of them run it are my friends. But it tells you how much things change over time. But and then went out to Davenport. And when I saw that place, I was like, oh, this is a campus. This is pretty cool. And then actually ended up going there and went out to Palmer and Davenport. That's how I ended up getting out there in the first place.
So since you became a chiropractor, you've done a lot of pretty cool and unique things that kind of separate you from other doctors. Could you maybe touch on some of the things you're involved with? Yeah,
it's some of those things have been kind of brought on. I was in practice just like everyone else, and I had a letter from Blue Cross Blue Shield in South Carolina, and they wanted to audit me for some rehab stuff that we were doing. And I kind of was irritated. I said, no, I'm not paying any money back for this. And then ended up, how do you say it? Becoming a thorn in the side of the people of Blue Cross South Carolina, and having a conversation with their head legal counsel. And through conversation, actually went to Columbia and met with her and chatted, and we became friends in this process. And then she started to ask me, why I was getting audited. Went through the whole thing. It was a lot different than a lot of the audits we see now. But in the conversation that took place, what I found was that, they wanted to hammer home a reason for not paying for certain things, and it was wrong. And I ended up winning the audit. And then what ended up happening was a little different. Instead of saying, okay, fine, I think it was nothing. It was like maybe $3,000 at the time. And she says to me, she says, well, we've read your review, your reply, and we're going to go ahead and mark the audit as done, and we're not going to audit you, and you're correct, and you were correct in appealing. Therefore, there's nothing. And the reason was some level of something about our license didn't say we could do something, if I remember correctly back in the day. And I was like, okay, but I had through phone calls, 6 or 7 friends that all called each other and said, I got this letter. I got this letter. Hey, you got this letter. I got this letter. And I said, well, what are you going to do I have 6 or 7 other friends. What are you going to do? They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I got 6 or 7 other friends that have this same letter. So if you're going to write mine off, are you writing theirs off? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'll call you back. And the lady called me back later. She goes, yes, we'll write off the whole thing. So at that point in time, it became one of those, oh, well, John got it done. And I was just a member of the state association at the time. And then from there, they invited me part of the state insurance committee. And then from there, became president and did all kinds of other things. But that's where it all started. It was just a letter that I just wouldn't accept as a no. And it started to mushroom into the, I guess, the risk management world from just the clinical side.
And so now you run a program called Custom Chiro Solutions, where you kind of consult people on what they should do if they get into compliance issues?
Well, it's a little bit more than that. I think if you look at it, let's put it this way. Let's say, look, you were the captain of the Titanic, okay? The question I'll ask you is, did you see the iceberg before you hit it? The answer would be yes. Look, did you try and turn the boat? Yes. Did you hit the iceberg? Well, yes. Okay. That's called inertia, right? So when someone comes to us, I'd rather them be in a different place. Someone who's in an audit, they're really, really tough place to work with because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them. I'd say the happiest we are when working with people are new students who just graduated, because I can help them avoid all the mistakes before anything happens. People who are in practice now that want to make positive changes, they're easy because they're not in trouble. So, people in an audit, yes, we can work with them and help them, make changes, but they've got to handle 2 things at once. They got to make the change they need to make that caused the audit in the first place, and they have to get past the audit also. So it's people in trouble are a little bit harder to work with because they're not focused on what's going to happen in 6 months. They're worried about, am I going to lose my house? So it's really different things. That's why I really like working with people who are just out of school and opening, and then the people who don't have any problems, because then we can look and see what mistakes they're making, and it becomes a lot easier of a transition as compared to someone who, has, an insurance company breathing down their neck. So, we help them, and then from there we help them make changes that reduce their profile with insurance companies. So if we can do that, then we could change exactly what the insurance company thinks of them when they're seen. So it's no different for me when I go on stage and I speak across the country when there was live events, right? You go out, the last thing I do before I start is I check, do I parsley my teeth? Is my zipper up? Are my shoes tied? Now, the reason why I do that is because I want to make sure that I see myself the way someone in the audience is going to see me. And I do that because I want to manage their perception of me. If I walked out there and I was all disheveled, they'd be like, oh, I'm never going to listen to this guy. I lose the audience from the very beginning. And it's the same thing that we do with our clients. We want to manage what they look like before they ever bill anything. That way they know what their care plan would do before they ever sold it to anybody. If you can do that before you actually sell a care plan, half your battle is over with an audit. You'll win before anything ever happens. It's not documentation. It's the fact that you manage what your coding looks like before you do it. That's the biggest part that most people don't get.
So can you mention maybe some of the stages that you've spoken on?
Oh God. Parker Vegas, Palmer Homecoming for years, Palmer West, Palmer Davenport, Logan. I was on the postgrad faculty for a while at Logan, FCA National, FCS, GCC, GCA, South Carolina, North Carolina, Minnesota. Gosh, New Jersey, Georgia, and Texas. What was the one we were just talking about? Out in out in Oregon.
Pyrofest.
ChiroFest, yes. Paul Reed is a client of ours. All those different places. I mean, Colorado. I mean, it's been. I think I go up and down associations and groups and consulting groups and things like that. So everything from MDDC groups all the way over to straight groups. So it's been all over. That's why I mean, right now I'm almost 2 million miles on Delta Airlines. So it's been pretty much a lot of places. And by the way, we have clients in Canada and the UK. So because for what we create for them, we create for them a process that creates documentation that doesn't necessarily have to be related to Medicare, but they can still be sued for malpractice. So we definitely want to make sure that their documentation doesn't have to be about coding; it's about documenting what happened. So that's why we have clients in Canada and the UK. It's in that situation, it's about how do you document as quickly as possible, but also do it from a risk standpoint that reduces someone's ability to go ahead and say that you hurt them and then not have proof about it.
Everything you're sharing is so noteworthy for people. So I know that people are out there like Davila's dropping gold after gold after gold after gold, because I think, you might be humbled by it, but what I hear is you're helping people with their careers. And I think that that's the best thing, is to have kind of like, I don't want to call you a watchdog, but you have like that type of like system behind people to know that they're being compliant, that their records are standing up, and that they don't have the anxiety of the audit.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I one of the things I remember when I first when I sold my clinics and started doing this full time, I had someone ask me, "Do you miss adjusting somebody?" And the answer is, yes, you do. You missed adjusting someone and them getting adjusted and looking and go, "Wow, that was amazing." And I still adjust my family. I have a chiropractor friend of mine, a couple of friends here locally that we all adjust each other, that kind of stuff. But what the difference is that, do I get that one-on-one thing? If I was in my office, do I get that one-on-one thing? Yeah, I did. Do I miss it? Yes. But now, like a great example, I have a client of mine, he sees, he was in the middle of a whole Medicare thing. Someone on Facebook, if you saw him, you know exactly who he was, in the middle of a Medicare fraud situation. I mean, to clear that up for somebody so he can help 1,500, 2,000 people a week. I mean, it's just a matter of scale. And to get, I could list off, probably 10 people that would say that what I did or help, is helping, between 10 to 15,000 people a week, in the profession right now, as far as them getting adjusted, because we were able to let them continue to practice from a position, by the way, from a position of power, not fear. And that's a big thing. I don't think people get. People think of, compliance and documentation as a fearful situation. And that's not it at all. I mean, to be able to say, come after me, like you said, watchdog, it's like, okay, God, I dare you. Come ask for my notes. I have them. They're right here, please. And then if you do that, that allows you to take anybody. Because I'll tell you what, man, there's an interesting concept about who pays and why, when it comes down to patients, who's paying for the visit. That should never come into it. Because I've run into some people, I don't want to take Medicare. Why? It doesn't make any sense. The truth is that the documentation for a Medicare patient versus a regular cash or self-paying patient is exactly the same. Oh, no, it's not. No, yeah, it is, because the insurance company doesn't dictate the documentation. CPT does. So the code you use is what really dictates how you're supposed to document. So if that's the case, then it's standard of care to use the correct CPT code, because the first page of the CPT manual says you must use the code that best describes the service provided. So if that's the case and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, your documentation should be correct no matter who it is. So, or remember, no matter who's paying, put it that way. So in those situations, what I think we do best is we allow someone to practice from a position of power, meaning they can see anyone at any time, regardless of who's paying, without fear of retribution. And I think that's the biggest component of what we do for somebody, is to remove that fear. Because if not, then, if you're afraid to document for a Medicare patient, then what stops you from being afraid to document a PI case? Well, if that's the case, then why not be afraid to handle Blue Cross? Why not afraid to handle Medicaid? All of a sudden now, if I take away all those other people, then who am I marketing to? There's no one left to market to. I'm only going to market to self-pay. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So, if we can help people understand that difference, then the game is won. The game is really won, because then they can go after anybody. and your practice will expand just because you've opened up your marketing to anyone who comes in. Not just, I'm not taking any insurance. Insurance doesn't matter. Who's paying is irrelevant. Be able to see anybody. That's the key.
Well, you said something earlier about you shifted gears from being in private practice to being in the practice of supporting
Yep.
others. And I know in chiropractic, sometimes it's like this dogmatic like mindset, like if you're not in there, adjusting subluxations, you're not a chiropractor. And I'm sure that, I'm sure that's like probably come up in like conversations around like campfire with other chiropractors.
No, not with me.
No, not with you.
Not with me. No.
But there's a huge dogmatic approach to like, if you're not like practicing chiropractic, you're not a chiropractor. So maybe you could like share how you feel about that topic.
Well, I mean, listen, I would, Jim, I would say this. I would say that you could say that, and there are probably some people who are out there in the management field that someone who has that opinion would go after them. They haven't practiced in 60 years and they don't know anything about it, and they have people on their stage talking to them about it, that type of thing. I think the point of attack for us that goes after what it is that people are looking for is, if you can defend the subluxation and still be compliant, then I'm not going to have that issue. And the main reason is because we go at everything from a functional subluxation based 33 principles idea when it comes down to what it is we're trying to get accomplished for our clients. And we don't really, I never get that. And the truth is, when someone says, well, what do you know, you're not in practice? Well, the truth is, to be fair, I don't want someone who does this part-time to adjust me. I mean, is that fair? I mean, if that's what you want to go, if you want to go that route. But then again, I don't want someone who reads some of Medicare's and OIG's opinions to help me create my compliance standard. So I mean, which one do you want? Do you want someone who does compliance part-time? I mean, they're out there. You can have those opinions.
What you're saying is that you've created a pro-level grade system for chiropractors to have peace of mind.
They can practice the way they want without fear. And I think that's what it is. And I'm not preachy about it. I mean, I speak on both sides of the aisle when it comes down to where I'm speaking and events I'm working at or speaking at, or who's in the audience. I think people need to realize that, if you want this specific information, you're not going to get the best information if it's someone who's trying to handle both practice and compliance at the same time. So it's either you want all of it or you're going to get some of it. So, you'll probably get hate mail for that, or I probably will, but that's fine.
It's okay.
So who are some of your chiropractic heroes? Who have you looked up to on your journey to get to where you are?
Let's see. Some of my chiropractic heroes, some of the people I really, really enjoyed working under. When I was in school, I loved Don Gran at Palmer. Recently passed away. He's one of my favorite. Even when he became one of the administrators of Palmer, Florida, I would go down there and I would get down there early. I'd get an early morning flight just to get down there and have lunch with him and spend time and talk with him. And that was always one of my favorites. I loved hanging out with him. And mainly because when I was in school, he did my practical to enter into clinic, and he was my staff doctor. And I always argued with him. I said, you still owe me 1 point. He goes, no, you palpated the wrong side. And this is after 25 years of us going back and forth of all this different stuff. But that was probably one of my favorites as far as people I remember taking the idea of how you should really, really care for people. And that's one of the things that I really, really enjoyed. After that, it became more along the lines of who's writing and doing things. I think Jeff Miller did a great job. I used to work with him when I was a foot leveler speaker, and then he wrote a textbook on physical exam. Love that. Sousa's book was really, really influential as far as differential diagnosis for the chiropractor, those types of things. So I mean, those. I'm not the typical. I enjoy this person because they adjusted. It was a little bit more different for me. It was along the lines of who made things repeatable and concrete for me. And those people really did it. Now, some of the technique stuff, yeah, there's some cool stuff and cool people that I met and technique wise, and that was good. But those people that could quantify change, that to me, that was really, really interesting.
That's a great angle that you took on that. And I think, when you're talking about earlier about choosing schools, I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that students should choose schools based on geography of like where they grew up, or what would your take be on like where would recommend people to make that decision?
How can I put this? From a total xenophobic standpoint, if you're not a Palmer doctor, you're not a chiropractor. I could say that, if you didn't spend at least one winter in Davenport, you're not really a chiropractor. You could say that out loud, and we do, and it happens. We get around our Palmer friends and make fun of everyone else. But one of the advantages that I have, because I work with clients in schools everywhere. If whatever you need to do to get through the process, do it. From there, who you are as a chiropractor really takes place once you leave. So I've really, as a joke, yeah, that's funny and everything else. But the truth is, I know some of the most talented principled chiropractors that went to Northwestern. And I know some ambulance chasers from Davenport. So, it goes both ways. And it's really what happens once you leave. So I really have no issue either way. Do I want to see my Palmer friends, do well in practice? Absolutely. Do I want to see everyone else do well? Absolutely. So I mean, really, whatever it takes. And you know what, Jim? It's funny you say that, because the truth is, when it comes down to schools, it's all a game on how you're able to go ahead and run through the gauntlet in order to get out whole mentally. How can I get out of this whole entire process as a whole person so I can go ahead and get my SHIT together to be able to practice? If not, I know people that couldn't get out, and they couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't get past the boards to be able to get done. They got through school, but they weren't able to go ahead and mentally get past the board component. So, I mean, whatever it takes for you to get out, because the truth is, I mean, from a compliance standpoint, they're not teaching this. You got to understand, schools make my job easy.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Chiro Tax Pro, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
And all schools, because the school's job is to get people out. It's not to go ahead and teach them what they need to do once they get out. It's to give them the minimum necessary that CCE says they need. So the truth is that, when they get out, they look at me and they go, well, doesn't everyone get the same code? Doesn't everyone get the same thing? Well, no. And they go, well, how come they didn't teach me that? Well, they didn't teach you that because if you were doing wellness visits, your documentation would be less. Remember, the code requires the documentation. Your documentation would be less in a wellness visit. And if that's the case, you'd still be having to deal with the minimum requirements for CCE to be able to do this many types of services when you only did this many because this many were wellness care. Oh, okay. So they make you do everything every time, not to teach you what you're supposed to do from a compliance standpoint, but to do everything every time so that you get the number of contacts, number of touches to what it is that you have to do in order to do this part correctly when you get out. And that's what most people don't realize about the schools. It's, well, how come they ever teach me compliance? Because you would argue. If I taught you about compliance and what was active care and wellness care, you'd see 90% of your adjustments were wellness care the entire time. And then you'd argue with the doctor and they go, okay, fine. And then you'd still be there 3 years later trying to get 200 active care visits.
Well said.
So, get done, get out. I don't care where you go to school. When you leave, that's when you start to go ahead and create who you are as a provider.
So where do you see the profession going in the next 20 years or so?
Oh man. Let's see.
That's not a good thing.
Hold on one second. Here's the funny thing. If I were to say I knew where it was going, the answer would be I don't. I think if you were to tell me things like, if you would ask me, would you, John, when I first graduated, would you be here right now? I would say, I'd be some guy walking around the table. I'd have no idea this is what we're at today. And that's just in 20 years since I graduated. There was no, you understand, there was no internet. There was no email. There were no cell phones. There were pagers. And you had to have your staff had a code come, number 7, with just the number 7, come back to the office now. It was totally different. So, if we were to say, what would be better in 5-10 years, it's really based upon who gets involved politically. And I mean that not from obviously during election cycle, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is within chiropractic. You get a lot of chiropractors like, I don't care, whatever. But really, where we're going in 5, 10, 15, 20 years is all based on who's on the boards now. And if you don't like the way the board is not, like certain boards are not supportive of the VSC, then that means you need to become friends with your governor. And you need to be, you need to be the person who's appointed. And I say that because I was state association president. And, I got to go ahead and meet with our governor and talk about who we wanted on the board to go and support, every type of practice that we went in South Carolina at the time. Because we have everything from Sherman down to Palmer, the whole entire thing across South Carolina. We didn't want to leave anyone out. And, so that was way years ago. And even then, after I was done, the governor had appointed me to the DHEC board for Radiation Control Council. So I was on the board that actually licensed all the x-ray tubes in the state. So, those types of things on, fees and how they're going to, regulate those things. We should be involved in every facet. And in every facet of the game when it comes to these things. So where we're going in 5-10 years is really not something I can say. It's really the people who are watching this. Because listen, like you were joking before, I graduated in 94. I've been out 26 years. I'm almost done with this game. If you're out 2, 3, 4 years, man, it's your job. This is now your job. And if you don't like the way we've done it, then God bless you, make a change. And that's totally fair if you don't like the way we've done it. But you know what? It's up to you to change it now. And if you want it to be supportive of the VSC, then you need to go ahead and get involved politically so you can go ahead and change it at the board level. And if one thing that I haven't mentioned is the insurance side. I don't think it's relevant. I think it's really based on risk, like how much risk someone's willing to take. Because the truth is that when you look at when people come in, whether they're cash or insurance, all those situations, let's say we go to a one-payer system. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. Because don't forget, no matter who the payer is, you still have to document. And if you have people that don't believe in the way you practice it on the board, all it takes is a board complaint for that person to go ahead and turn you into the state board to go ahead and hammer you. And it's not about the payer at that point in time. You know what I mean? It's about whether or not you did what the board wants you to do. So you have to get on that board and go ahead and start being the person that's dictating what's required. That's where the profession's going. It's not an insurance thing. Am I afraid about one payer or not? No, not really. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the payer. It's about the way you deal with each individual, patient interaction and whether or not you protected yourself. So are we going to see one payer? I don't know. Are we still going to see patients after one payer? Yes. Am I worried about people who don't document? Yes. Does it have anything to do with insurance? No.
I'm really curious. You said something about board complaints. Mm-hmm. Is that something that your business helps people with as well?
Yeah, Custom ChiroSolutions. Yeah, what we do is when we take someone as a client, we actually act as their virtual compliance officer. So we'll actually work with them. If an insurance company, like our clients, they get a letter from the insurance company and they need to send documentation in, we'll help them prepare that data and send it back in. If they get a letter from the board, we help them to go ahead and answer that. I actually work with 2 different malpractice groups. So I'm actually on 2 cases right now, and then one case just finished. One other case right now with a chiropractor having a problem with the state board and dealing with the underwriter, helping the underwriter go ahead and protect this chiro. So we get data from all different points, and all this goes into how we help our docs, to navigate these waters. So that's also another reason why this is full time. I mean, there's no way in the world I could go ahead and I could spend 3 hours practicing. I couldn't do it. I don't have the ability to stop focusing on one thing to go to the next thing, to go back to what I was talking about 10 minutes ago. It's got to be, let's do this, let's handle this, and let's get done with it. That's why this whole compliance thing is no different from practice. I mean, if you're going to practice, then do it well. If you're going to do this, then you got to do it well.
So I know you can answer this question if you want to, you don't have to, but when it comes to board complaints, are those typically something that somebody as a practice member or past practice member does to the chiropractor, or is it something that a chiropractor does to another chiropractor?
Let's put it this way. Recently, there's been quite a few chiropractor on chiropractor complaints. This whole COVID thing has really turned a lot of people into we'll call them passive activists. I've seen a lot of anonymous complaints that use a lot of terminology that are really close to what a chiropractor would use. Okay, that's A. Now, before COVID, the majority of board complaints that we've seen were all financially motivated. They were very few where I broke someone's ribs. Most of it was, when we get down to it, it was the patient, you get a refund and now they're mad and they said they hurt them. So, before COVID, it was a lot of financial reaction. After COVID, since COVID, it's been, a lot of, DC on DC action. And it's really sad. It's really sad.
That's why I kind of wanted to ask that to you, because I knew that you would have like the looking glass to be able to share the information with our audience.
I have quite a few friends on both sides of the game, and I'm lucky enough to have those conversations to be able to hear what's going back and forth. So yeah, it's not fun. I mean, and I understand. I get it. I know why. I've told other chiropractors to turn chiropractors in for certain things. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, it's illegal to not bill Medicare. If you see Medicare in an active care situation, it's illegal to bill the patient cash and not bill for them. And when you do that, it ruins the relationship with that patient when they go to another chiropractor. Or they'll actually say, I don't want to go here. They'll ruin that relationship because the patient's like, well, how come the other doctor never made me pay? Or how come this doctor made me pay and you didn't do this? Or how come you didn't give me free exams when I got them before? So in those situations, it's like, okay, well, if you don't like it, then go ahead and what they're doing is illegal. Go complain. And in those situations, I totally understand. This right now is obviously there's issues with whether or not you believe you boost someone's immunity, or you can stop someone from getting COVID, or you can do all these different things. There's a lot of weird stuff being put out online. And I understand why on both sides. But that's what I'm seeing. I don't have an opinion either way, but I see it on both sides.
Yeah, I think that gives a lot of clarity to people out there that will watch this episode and listen to it, because most people are just, they live in this bubble where it's like my business, my decisions, my doctor degree, my practice, my, but they don't realize that there's a larger pool out there. When they make my decisions, it has a downstream effect on our decisions, which is a larger chiropractic profession as a whole.
You say that, first off, what people understand, it's not your decision. And that's the reason. Let's go back to what you asked me before. Where's the profession going in 5 to 10, 20 years? The answer is it goes where you want it to go if you get involved, meaning the board's dictating, right? So the board's dictating what you're supposed to be doing. Go ahead and stand in front of your board and say, I don't care what you're saying. I'm going to practice my way. You tell me how far you get. Because they're the one who give you the license. They're the ones who give you the license. And I don't, to want to turn it into that, but that's the absolute truth. You don't do what they say and they'll take your license away. It's that simple, And then the other side of it is, should we practice for the greater good? Absolutely. I read a book once. It was called, it was called Winning the Crowd. It was a book about a magician, and the magician tells a story where he's at some beach in California and he's watching this magician do some tricks, And it's like this wide avenue on the beach, that type of stuff, and there's like street performers, everything else. And the guy's out there, he's been there for years, and he's doing the tricks, and people are making fun of him, and the whole thing. Now, the guy writing the book is what he called the magician to the stars. He charges $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a show. And you go to someone's house and do this for all the for people who wanted a high end magician, which is cool, whatever. But he talks to the guy afterwards, and he goes, "Can I ask you a question? Why do you not care about the quality of your show?" And he's like, "Oh man, you don't understand. These people, they've been here for years, and they know everything I do. I'm only out here trying to get tips. Why are you bothering me?" He goes, "Well, how many people do you not know that are there to see you? There's different people all the time, but the majority of people know who I am. It doesn't really matter." He goes, "Well, that's unfair. It's unfair for you to treat our profession like this. Because the truth is that, if you're acting this way, then what happens when that person comes to me and says, 'Please do a show for me,' and they see that I want to charge $2,000-$3,000, like, oh, magician, isn't that the same guy who I saw at Venice Beach, who doesn't care and just acts this way? And if that's the case, why are you charging me? I mean, all you can do is show up and just make fun of yourself the entire time, right? Isn't that what magicians do?" And I read that and I was like, epiphany moment. Should we really care about how we're quote unquote principled? Yes, we should be principled both in practice and in business. You can't say you're principled in practice when you're not principled in business. You can't be a principled chiropractor and then rip off Medicare patients. Those two things aren't equal. You know what I mean? I don't bill Medicare. I just have them sign the ABN every visit. That's how we do it. Well, that's illegal, and you're a thief. And I have no problem. Anyone wants to come on the show, we can argue it all day long, and I'll just show you all the proof. But that person ruins it for everyone else. Someone who doesn't take co-pays or writes off what the insurance pays, doesn't collect what's left, does all this free stuff, free exams, free x-rays, all this stuff that we see from marketing groups. Come on, you're cheapening it. And it reminds me of that book every time. Every time. What happens if this is what they think when they see you, or they get a copy of your records and they're like, this is like chicken scratch. What does this mean?
So if you could sit and have a one-to-one chat with anyone in the world, who would it be?
If I could what?
Have a one-to-one chat with anyone, living or passed on.
Like if you could sit down with coffee with somebody for an hour.
Sit down with anyone for an hour. Who would it be? Man, you didn't prepare me for that one. If I were to sit down with anyone,
That's where we're evolving with our show.
I'm telling you, you threw me a 3-2 curveball there. I would say anyone. I would probably want to sit down and chat with, let's see. Do we go evil or we go nice? Sports hero? No. You know what I would love to do? I would love to sit down and can I give you two people at the same time?
Yeah.
I would love to sit down and watch Roger Maris and Hank Aaron have a conversation together. And I would love to hear the both of them talk about chasing Babe Ruth. That conversation, I would love to sit there and listen to the two of them because they've really crossed paths. I would love to sit there and listen to the two of them and the differences between listening to both their hardships, dealing with it. Both, Maris dealing with as a Yankee and losing his hair, and then, Hank Aaron in Atlanta going through it and the racial stuff that was going on with him at the time. I would love to hear it because I would love to see how much they had in common as they chased what happened with Ruth. I think that would be a fun conversation to sit there and listen to.
That was enlightening, man. That's well done.
It's not a baseball conversation.
Well, I'm a huge Cubs fan, and I grew up as a Cubs fan, and this COVID season is like something that is deplorable to me, but I still kind of listen to it. But when we think about like you now, let's turn the conversation back to you. What are you reading? What are your hobbies? And are you listening to any podcasts?
Let's see. Reading. When I'm done at the end of the day, I don't want to read anything else. I read every Medicare and OIG missive that comes out from cover to cover. That's my daily activity. So at the end of the day, to read a book, I'm ready to check out and do nothing at that point in time, because it's pretty mundane stuff. I mean, there's nothing. Let's be fair. That if it wasn't for my ability to tell semi-funny jokes, this would be a boring topic, and it still is. Even at the end of it, it's still a boring topic. I'm reading a book. Oh man, to sit down and read some more, I'll pass. But it's all day. I mean, probably close to 10 to 12 full-length emails / OIG opinions a day, just to be able to find one nugget. And it's not just, it isn't just chiropractic stuff. It's everything. Because you're looking for one of the latest updates we did in our macros for our clients. There was an OIG opinion on what medical necessity was in a case when it came down to the way the doctor was prescribing medication. And the idea of necessity was really where, it's like I was getting on the phone with my coder, Jen Dickinson, who's our CPC. And as I'm reading it to her and going, do you see that they're looking for this component? And she's like, oh, that makes total sense. It says it this way, but we don't say it this way. And we started to tweak some of the things that we do, just reading to find one nugget. That way you can go ahead and not have to, not to look for it or read it yourself. And those are the types of things that, that we do on a regular basis. So how much are we, what are we looking for to be able to do? So that's all I read. I know it's not the answer you wanted, because you probably want some cool book, but that's it's all the stuff that I read on a regular basis. Hobbies really, watching my kids. Both of them are at the College of Charleston. My daughter's a senior, and I go to as many events that she's involved in when it comes down to what she's doing regarding her degree. She just got into some history honor society. So we go down for those events. And then my son plays soccer for the College of Charleston. So I go to as many games as possible. I try to travel as much as possible with the team, but sometimes it's kind of, impossible to get to, Northeastern on a Wednesday night, that kind of thing. But I'm 90 minutes from Charleston, and I probably have 90% of our miles on the cars from here to Charleston and back, going down and back and forth. So that's really, everything I do really is really based on them. In fact, if you look at my Facebook page, I'd say 90% of what I post is really about them. Mainly because that's innocuous enough. No one can yell at me for that. So that kind of stuff. So that's really what I do as far as fun and management. So just that and unplug after the end of the day. Because the other thing we do also is we answer questions for our clients. And that's a lot. I mean, but by the time let's say we get 4 or 5 questions that I don't have the answer to, that's enough reading to go ahead and research and get the answer back to, so they can have, they can make the decisions that they need to make once they get back into their office.
Well, I think that's a good wrap for us. We thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yeah.
I enjoy the personal relationship that we are able to build with you, and going forward, I see great things happening. And it's just really awesome to hear the things that you're working on and the things that you support this beautiful profession with, and the work that you do behind the scenes that no one really understands or knows, but it supports people's careers and gives them the ability to go out there and serve, which is the real premise of chiropractic. If you guys are watching, didn't know that it's a give, love, serve profession. But if you don't have compliancy and good notes and good record keeping, give, love, serve just gave you a board complaint.
Yeah, that's one of the things I try and explain to people. I mean, I only know of one person who changed the world from jail. Let that sink in for a second, And unfortunately, as a chiropractor, I'm not that person. So I know, one person from jail, and that's about it. You know who that is? Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, I was going to say Robben Island.
Nelson Mandela is the only one to ever change anything from jail, and none of us in the profession are Nelson Mandela. So, and that's one of the things that, Jim, that people look back and they go with pride. Oh, I'd go to jail for my profession. It's a different gig today. It's not the same. And there's some romanticism tied to that. I understand it, but it isn't the same thing. And there's a whole political aspect to why people get in trouble, why people get prosecuted. There's a different level of vitriol as compared to, well, you just, we're going to go ahead and try and make an example out of a chiropractor because they're practicing without a license. It's totally different nowadays. It wouldn't nearly be the same. They're not going to let you go ahead and go into Gen Pop with your own adjusting table. So, it's not quite the same thing.
So what are some websites you could give us if people wanted to learn more about you?
Sure. You can find us at ChiroSolutions.com. You find everything about what we do there. And if you want data, as far as things you could use, I post stuff all the time on Facebook. Our group is obviously my name, John Davila, helping chiropractors do the right thing. So you can go there and then like the page, and I have all kinds of stuff that we post there all the time, from HIPAA stuff to compliance material to obviously the COVID situation. And by the way, if you're practicing without a COVID manual, I have the ability for you to get a free, create for yourself your own manual. So go there, go to the Facebook page. I have a free video and free downloads, get all the stuff you need. This isn't a situation where I'm trying to, say, oh, you need to hire me for this. This is not the time for that. Go there, get that information. Yeah, and it isn't about documenting what's going on with the patient per se. In these situations, by the way, this is the other thing that we're seeing. Being flippant about the situation right now is not really the best idea. I'm seeing doctors being turned in by their staff to local health departments for not treating these rules with respect. So just keep that in mind. I've had 3 people already come back to us and go, I think my staff turned me into the state health board, and they're coming to investigate my office. Well, did you follow the rules in your city? Well, I just kind of said a few times that I think it was, BS. Cool, I get it. This is not, this is, you can argue with me all you want about whether you believe it or don't believe it or everything else. And trust me, I have my doubts as well. But in this situation, you've got enough people who think at this point in time, fear is a virtue. And unless you go ahead and at a minimum pay lip service to it, they're going to find a way to go ahead and hammer some people. And I know that may be an unpopular view, but if once again, if you're trying to go ahead and help your community, having the board hammer you is not the way to do it. Because that's one of the things when you asked me earlier about who's complaining to other people or about other chiropractors, it's chiropractors, and it's because some people are kind of loose with their lips on social media. So anyway, CustomChiroSolutions.com. Everyone smile.
Well, love and appreciate you, brother. Thank you for being such a value add to our show. And thank you for being unapologetically yourself and sharing the knowledge that you've learned over the past 26 years of being a chiropractic professional.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for being our guest today, Dr. John, and we want you to enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Will do. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Until next time, my friend.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.